It's time for the Chris and Andre Show.
You sent this video that was talking about why U.S. automakers are truly starting to panic now in the face of China and their EVs and how popular they are in terms of, you know, their affordability and availability basically everywhere outside of the United States.
Did you know that China sells more EVs than the rest of the world combined? In the span of just 5 years, they've become the leader in vehicle exports across the globe, beating out major players like Japan and Germany. But not only do they lead in exports, they also far and away lead in production of vehicles. And they've done all of this without being able to sell their vehicles in the US.
Since I got to go first last time, I'm going to let you kind of give your initial thoughts on this one.
I'll tell you what, when I went to Peru and my wife and I were talking about, you know, just stuff, right? I'm like, that's a nice car. And I'm like, it's Chinese. And I started looking around more and more. They were pretty much predominantly Chinese or Japanese. And they were nice cars. When I was in Mexico, I would say 7 out of 10, probably 8 out of 10 cars were Chinese. And they look nice. My wife's uncle rented a car in Mexico. I think it was a BYD. And the interior and just the features in the car were outstanding. Like top notch. Even the stitching of the leather, and it was real leather, which was impressive. Or it was really great manufactured leather, but it felt real and looked real. And the stitching was immaculate. I think we might have messed up as a country.
Yeah.
I think we might be in bad shape. Here's what I think. I think the tariffs of 100% on Chinese cars would have been a good short-term buffer to give U.S. manufacturers a chance to catch up. But you know what they decided to do? We're not going to make any more cars. We're just going to make trucks and crossovers and SUVs. Well, good luck with that.
And then, I mean, you see where it's gotten them, right? Because, yeah, I think I even had it in my notes that it's like, hey, 100% tariff on Chinese, you know, EVs, great example of how you can effectively use a tariff to protect a certain industry within your borders. But, to your point, that is a Band-Aid. That is not a permanent solution to just say, well, we're never going to import the cheap stuff from China or from wherever, right? Or even if it's not cheap. And then it wasn't coupled with the right incentives to get U.S. automakers to ramp up their investment and production of EVs, which is like you had to have those two things combined so that you can then remove the Chinese tariff at a point or reduce it to 50%, 25% over time to soften the blow and allow that, you know, your U.S. automaker market to take hold before you just flood the market with the BYDs.
Well, two things like stood out to me in that video. One was the Ford executive saying their cars are really nice, and what they've been able to do with technology is amazing. And I'm like,
and
bro,
we're seriously in trouble.
It's the most humbling thing I've ever seen. 70% of all EVs in the world, electric vehicles, are made in China. They have far superior in-vehicle technology. Huawei and Xiaomi are in every car.
I was like, bro, what are we talking about? So we'll just accept defeat. And the second thing,
it sounded like, you know, it was like we don't stand a chance. Everything's automated. There's not a single human on the floor, which is not
entirely true.
Yeah, and not necessarily the ideal scenario either. But I do understand that, you know, automation provides efficiency and it can provide a reduction in cost after the initial investment.
But that's inconsequential because here's the second part that stood out to me. they're not even cheap. There's two parts to that.
Yeah.
One, they're subsidized by the government. And two, they were able to drive cost downs with the automation. And I think that what that proves is we have an overinflated market. Mm-hmm. So I think we use the word cheap because we see it through a Western or a Western lens. And I think in my mind, it's just the fruition of like efficiency, right?
Yeah.
And in the long run, do you really want people just building cars forever? The answer is no, but you have to pivot.
Yeah, and I think that was part of why during NAFTA and then even during US MCA, you saw a lot of like a lot of the U.S. automakers were like, well, we're going to do some of the production in Mexico, and we're going to exploit some of the cheaper labor down there, but still be able to say our cars are made in America and get all the benefits of doing that. And we can, import the good steel from Canada, but we don't have to pay the tariffs on it. And, so it's like the U.S. automakers in particular, it seemed like kind of put themselves in a position there. But then, of course, that got ripped up. And the larger tariffs got put on that, and then they're like, "Oh, we'll do these little carve-outs for you so that you guys don't get completely screwed." But again, that's a Band-Aid. That's not a permanent solution.
So the argument would be, look, if you're trying to get an objective completed, do the things necessary to get it completed, and not skirt the inevitable thing. The inevitable thing was EVs are coming, whether we want to admit it or not. They're coming. So an investment from the government would be to subsidize car makers so they can actually, whether it's build plants, they probably can't do the batteries because we don't have the rare earth materials, but help them to set up the infrastructure to do the thing that you kind of need. Yeah. But they missed the boat. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but it's like...
No, you're fine. But it's a lot of the same messaging that I think we've been talking about for the last year and a half now, at least.
Right.
About, like, this is... You can't only do the first step, which is to impose the tariffs. You have to have the incentives for the local, manufacturers to expand or whatever it is in order, like, to build up that if that's your goal.
That's the rule. That's the goal now.
Goal is to increase manufacturing capacity within the United States, then yes, tariff this stuff and bring, or, say I'm going to introduce a tariff in 4 years or 3 years, whatever it is, after I've given all of these incentives to get the manufacturing up to, speed here in the U.S. so that people can more quickly switch off. So you don't have that, like...
I think you're missing what I'm saying. China subsidized the entire industry. Like,
yes. And
it's not about incentives.
There's more than 100
different manufacturers.
I think a subsidy is an incentive in a lot of ways.
I don't think so.
I'm not saying it's the only way to do it, but I don't know.
No.
I mean, granted,
No,
China has a different government setup in the way than we do, right? Like, they tend to have more direct investment in those companies, and
I think
more direct control.
And I think that allows them to. Okay, this is what I'm saying. That obviously worked. Now, I'm not saying we need 100 different car manufacturers. That's not my argument. My argument is, okay, we are going to be out of this market. I wouldn't say lose, right? We are going to be out of this market. And if we want to remain in this market, if we understand the impact that car manufacturers have on our economy, we need to invest in these industries. Yeah. Not to where incentives do nothing. They just all that does is continue the 3-card Monte where we're moving the money around all the time. I'd rather get to a point in this country where we understand an investment, why we're doing it, and fucking do it. And I think that we missed the mark there, and trying to continue to execute the way we always executed since like the 80s is dumb. So
what is the investment that should have been made then, if not subsidizing, or incentivizing like EV?
So incentives are exactly that. It's like the chip manufacturers that are no longer building their plants, right? We're going to give you a tax credit. Now, fuck that. If we have the money to even float the idea of giving $1.5 trillion to the Department of Defense, how about we just give $1.5 trillion to car manufacturers to build plants, to employ people, because the long-term return pays off in dividends.
But how? I guess I'm trying to understand, because you wouldn't foresee like the U.S. government taking an ownership stake in those companies.
It just becomes a forgivable loan. Like, I don't think we have to go completely Red Scare here, but what China did makes sense. Right. I don't think the scale of 100 companies makes sense, but I do understand.
Even the video talked that they expect that's going to consolidate down to roughly 15 over the next 5 to 10 years, and we've seen that in the U.S. as well, right? Like we had dozens of U.S. automakers at one point that have now shrunk down to primarily 3.
Primarily 2, because
I was gonna say,
Stellantis is not a U.S. company. So my argument would be that sometimes you just have to subsidize, and maybe that's just a cash infusion to that company, and you do the thing, you move on. Because if you want to stay in the market, and if you want the economy to, and again, I'm not an economist, but I'm smart enough to know that sometimes you got to look to your neighbor and see, hey, that worked. Let me try some of that. Just do the thing.
Yeah.
And BYD is a special case because the founder of that company had all the internals to make the batteries. So he started out like 20 steps ahead. So that was his thing already. He just had to pivot. Now, the other companies, I can't speak for them. And even though BYD's had some decline in sales, it's because not everybody's buying cars. I mean, that's just the nature of it. And they don't really have access to.
It's kind of interesting that they talked about that BYD, like a lot of the, not just BYD, but the EV manufacturers in China, because there's not as much margin to be made on the lower cost models, that they are looking to build bigger like EV trucks and SUVs, which is a lot of what the U.S. automakers did that got them to where they are now. But no, and I think to your point, would you rather invest $1.5 trillion or whatever, $500 billion into the U.S. automotive industry, or give it as a bailout when everything starts to fall apart?
Right.
Like we've done the second one, and we've seen that it doesn't really fix it. Again, like it's more of a Band-Aid, because you've waited until things have fallen off the rails before you start to inject cash back into it. And it seems like it would make a lot more sense to be like, hey, you're doing well. Here's extra money to do even more and invest in this. And
well, it's kind of like strategery.
Governor Bush? Strategery.
You have to understand that there are always going to be external pressures in your company to you have to be able to be adjustable and understand that the environment, right? And there are a couple things in OPEC late in the fall last year that could have, we could have kind of predicted that production may go down, oil futures may go up, and we would have known that was supposed to happen sometime in the early spring, right? Mm-hmm. But what you can't predict is that we're going to shut down the Strait of Hormuz and affect 20% of the world's oil production in general. Well, the early indicator last fall says we need to get out of this dependency on oil, because it's not about oil. In my mind, it's not about oil production or the ability to refine it and stuff like that. It's that the industries it affects, and how long do you want to have those industries tied to a unstable like resource? And that's the long-term view.
Well, and
in my mind.
especially for a nation that is as auto-dependent as we are,
Right.
right? I mean, and there are other, like I think Argentina, Brazil, like those are some other places that are also like heavy car dependent. But they, well, at least in some of the most of the major cities, they still have some form of public transportation. I am constantly disappointed with the lack of public transportation, like real viable public transportation in anywhere kind of outside of New York City. It seems like,
or Chicago.
Or Chicago, yeah. Like, and I know that there are some other places that do, but I'm just from my own personal travel experience and whatnot. And especially here in Wilmington, which is obviously not a big city, but it is just,
You want to hear something interesting? In Peru, they have the vehicles can either run on gas or natural gas, which is amazing. So when we went to Warmay from Lima, our driver she was just cruising. Like, it was amazing. But she stopped and had to fill up with natural gas. And I was like, first of all, you have to get out of the car while they fill it up, which is scary. I was like, okay. But the second part is, as far as fuel dependency, you have a country like Peru that has figured out how to navigate that, right? And what that does is it makes them less reliant on outside sources because Peru has natural gas. And number two, it doesn't restrict them to just the things that you need to do every day. I'm not saying that we convert our cars that can be either gasoline or liquid gas, but I would challenge the system to say, okay, so what's our plan B? Now, to be fair, anybody that thinks that because the Strait of Hormuz doesn't anybody that thinks it doesn't directly impact us is probably smoking crack, because the stark reality is, well, now you have to go in the global markets and go against those bids. So now you're going to have the 20% of more people trying to purchase oil.
If the global price of oil is $110 a barrel, why on earth would U.S. oil manufacturers sell it for anything less? You think they're going to sell it at home at a discount?
No.
Please, can I have some of the crack that you're smoking? Like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. It's like we were just talking about how they're refunding the tariffs, and the automakers are like, hey, we made money. And it's like, yeah, because you passed all that along to us. And it's like, I mean, don't hold your breath, because it's not like you're going to get a refund check for that at any point.
I think the whole car thing, would I buy a Chinese vehicle? Yeah, I would. In a heartbeat.
Me too.
Like, I'm not...
Why? I mean, I drive a Kia. Like,
right.
To me, ultimately, what's the difference? Like, I'm not buying it.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying I like everything about China.
No.
But we've conditioned ourselves to think everything China is bad.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily true.
I can speak from firsthand experience. Like, my company is based in Hong Kong, but we have, multiple factories in China, and the vast majority of our workforce, I would say, is based inside mainland China at this point. And they are, I mean, the people, right, of China are wonderful. Like,
right.
They are just people. And they are hands down some of the hardest working people that I've ever met. They're some of the nicest. Like, it's just, there's nothing wrong with China. You may not like some of their policies, and you may not like the way that their government, behaves towards some of their own people. But that's true of most places at the end of the day, right? And I think you're right. Like, we have been conditioned for a long time to believe that anything out of China must be bad, right? Or that it's a cheap copy of something from somewhere else.
And I think that's part of the problem that we face. I want to be clear. I'm not saying I support China invading Taiwan. I'm not, there's a lot of things I'm not saying, but I do think that what they've done effectively is bridge a gap that the U.S. used to fill. And here's my point of reference. When I lived in Europe, everybody drove a Mercedes. Everybody drove a BMW. That was like a Ford or a Chevy. Mm-hmm. But you could tell somebody had money if they were driving an American car. That was a status symbol. And American companies would make European branded vehicles to fit the needs of that demographic. When I was in Mexico, I drove by a couple of Ford dealerships, and there were some standard Fords I see here in the States, but there were also vehicles that they made specifically for Mexico. Same thing in Peru. And those soft diplomatic tools that we use, such as commodities like vehicles, I mean, they make a world of difference. When I had left the airport in Lima, I saw a Ford Raptor. I was like, I want a Ford Raptor. But I mean, so it's not like, I mean, we're advocating that position very quickly. Yeah. And so, shit.
If nothing else, what you know with China is it's going to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And
Xi Jinping's mission is to replace the United States as the world economic leader.
He's doing a
full
job.
Full stop. Full stop. That's his.
Like, it's not about agreeing with anything that they do. Human rights violations, Taiwan, Hong Kong, all of that stuff. But it's recognizing their ability in this moment to capitalize on the U.S. faltering. And,
right.
I mean, let's not even faltering, falling flat on its fucking face on
purpose.
Stage.
Actually jumping on its face. Like it's...
Yeah, that's fair. Like swan diving off the roof and yelling, "Look at me!"
It's like some clown trying to crowd surf and everybody just steps away. It's like, nah, dude, nope.
Go with it, man. Just do it. Feel the breeze and let it fly. Oh yeah, 747.
Look, I think electric vehicles. Look, the environment is telling us every day it's in pain, and I'm not a hippie, but I
can vouch.
I will be pretty honest and say when I saw snow in a desert and camels like freaking out, I was like, yo, maybe they're onto something. Yeah. When I saw snow in Texas, I was like, yo, they're really onto something. It doesn't take a lot to convince me that something's not right. During COVID, when we stayed inside and all the animals were like, whew. I mean...
And it's unfortunate because it really, aside from just the EV side of things, it feels like we're really moving backwards on so many of the environmental, aspects of things and trying to prevent the worsening of that. And I feel like we're so close to that tipping point of not being able to
I'll summarize it like this. My ankle has gotten a lot better. And the reason being is because I put an ankle stabilizer on and I started like paying attention to what I was doing, and my ankle's been able to heal. So I have probably 90-ish% of my mobility back in my ankle. I think that's kind of what the planet's telling us. Like, I really do. It's like, hey, I want to support you, but you're killing me, dog. Like, let's figure. You can do some things to kind of mitigate a lot of this. I think EVs would be we depend on transportation. Especially where I live, you can't walk anywhere. There is no public transit. Well, there is in my town, and I could technically get it. But there are
viable and feasible, because you could ride the series systems of buses for 3 hours to get to your destination.
Right.
But that's not really. I mean, for a 30-minute drive.
Yeah. Why don't we have a train that goes from Asheville to Carolina Beach?
Well, now they're finally talking about.
They're doing a study. It's another study.
Yeah, the one from Raleigh to Wilmington, basically, and they've supposedly gotten the approval for the funding that they've requested. But yeah, that's a project that would finish in 20 fucking years. Like, that's something that should have been done when you built I-40 in the first place. But
Right.
that's neither here nor there. Thanks for checking out the Chris and Andre Show. This is the part where we ask you to like and subscribe. You could also leave a comment and share this with someone you think would find useful. For more content like this, head on over to chrisandandreshow.com. Remember, stay sane, stay safe, and stay salty. We'll see you on the next one.